So it's being reported that the $20 million lawsuit that the accuser of Nicki Minaj's husband, Kenneth Petty, filed against he and his wife, Nicki Minaj, together but separately, because even though they're both defendants, they're not one together in this lawsuit. She had to file it against both of them. He has been filed a default judgment against, but not Nicki Minaj. So basically what that means is that Kenneth Petty did not respond to the complaint. He did not answer the complaint in a timely manner to the court, and because of that, Jennifer Hoff, the accuser, her attorney filed a request for a default judgment, and the court has essentially granted the request for the default judgment. But that's against Kenneth Petty. It's not against Nicki Minaj. So that is good news for Jennifer Hoff and her attorney, because her attorney, he basically is like out here saying that, he told Kenneth Petty to prepare his opposition to the request for default judgment and explain to the court why his, client and her husband believe they're both above the law. And so that's basically what he did not do. He did not file an answer to the complaint. And so now with this default judgment, it doesn't put money in her pocket. So that's something that people need to understand. Someone could file a $500 million lawsuit against someone, and that person may not respond to answer the complaint. When someone doesn't respond, what that essentially does is it gives that plaintiff, the accuser, the complainant, whatever term is used for that court proceeding, the upper hand in winning the case, because there's nothing to go back and forth about. There's no arguments. They filed the complaint, they had the person served, the person refused to respond to it, or they didn't do it in a timely manner, or they didn't even reach out to request an extension to be able to respond. Sometimes people do that, and unfortunately there are times where you have a legitimate cause for requesting an extension to answer, and that party doesn't grant the extension, or the court doesn't grant the extension to answer the complaint, because they don't, to be honest, the courts don't really give people a whole lot of time, and especially depending on the state that it's in, a real, just a decent amount of time to be able to respond to something, especially if it is something that came out of the blue and someone was not prepared for, and most people really aren't prepared for. So in some instances, the response time could be 30 days. There's sometimes the response time is 20 days. When you think about that in the grand scheme of things, if you're in a state where the response time is 20 days, that's really a couple of weeks and a few days. And if you don't have time to find, if you don't have counsel yet, an attorney, and you haven't had time to really find someone that's going to help to represent you, and you have to go over the matters and they have to come up with an answer to be filed, and they don't do it in a timely manner, then that person can, file for a default judgment. So what essentially he should have done was had an answer filed and then request to have an amended answer filed later. That is something that could have been done, but he didn't do anything. But the $20 million default judgment, like I said, does not put cash in her pocket, because you could file a $500 million lawsuit against, a company, a person, or whatever. If they don't respond and you get a default judgment, you can get that default judgment, but then that judgment has to be pursued. And a lot of times, if the people or the party or the company or the entity does not have that money, you just have a paper judgment that you cannot collect on. Yeah, you may try to have garnishment of money in terms of payroll, things, garnished assets, so that you could sell them to collect the cash or whatever. But in most instances like that, the defendant is going to probably file for bankruptcy protection, which essentially is going to prevent that person from getting anything. So again, this just recently happened. We don't know what is going to happen from this point on. It's possible that he may file for bankruptcy protection, and what that will do, even though he doesn't have $20 million. I mean, I guess his wife does, but he doesn't. And so just because she won a $20 million lawsuit against Kenneth Petty, it doesn't mean that she essentially wins $20 million from Nicki Minaj, because it doesn't work that way. Nicki Minaj has not had a default judgment filed against her, so she still is in this matter, and she still plans on, I guess, fighting this. So she has this judgment against Kenneth Petty. Will she get $20 million from him? I highly doubt that, but we will see. We don't know 100% for sure what is going to happen after, the fact. They could still come to some sort of settlement agreement or whatever, and essentially have the case, even though she got a default judgment, have the case dismissed, either with or without prejudice. The with prejudice means that if this person doesn't do what they agreed to do, then we still have the right to come back and file action after the fact, or without, that's without prejudice. But with prejudice means that this action is dismissed and we cannot file a lawsuit against this person again in the same manner, in the same matter, and in the same manner. So we'll see what happens if he's going to file for bankruptcy protection because he's had this $20 million judgment that has been found against him. It probably sounds like that's what he's going to need to do. So we'll see what happens after that. But you guys let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section. And I guess we'll see what is to come with Nicki Minaj's portion in this, if she has had an answer filed yet, or if she is planning on filing an answer, or if she got an extension to file an answer, because again, the default judgment was just against Kenneth Petty. It wasn't against Nicki Minaj. So we will find out what happens next. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing. And until the next time, I'm just being beautifully honest.